Welcome to our next faith study. This question comes from a member of the church, one of our younger questions, one of the youngest people to ask a question. And this is a person who is in his workplace hearing a lot of conversation about the book of Revelations and asking, does the book of Revelations, with its references to the apocalypse and to end times, have any bearing on this particular pandemic that we are going through? And so this younger person asked the question of a parent, and the parent asked the question of me. And so that's why we are here looking at the book of Revelations and what reference it may or may not have to this crisis, or indeed any crisis. Let me begin at the outset and say this. When I was a young man, which was not yesterday, I used to watch a lot of cable TV, a lot of sports, in particular the Red Sox and the Patriots. And for whatever reason, on cable TV coming out of Bangor, Maine, on the particular cable channel, just before the sports event, would be one of the TV evangelists. And any number of them. And I could give you a number of names, but I don't think I need to. I think many of you know what I mean. And they would inevitably speak about two books in the Bible. The book of Daniel from the Old Testament and the book of Revelation from the New Testament. For whatever reason, out of all the books of the Bible, those were the two. Actually, I do know the reason. The reason is that for whatever reason, those particular TV preachers love to talk about the end of the world. And at that time, there were all kinds of conversation about the Soviet Union and the United States of America, and how they would come to some sort of apocalyptic war, a war of what they would call Armageddon, and then the world would come to an end, Jesus would return, and all of the good people, or the people, not good people, the people who had accepted Jesus as their Savior, they would all be ushered into heaven, and the rest of us, I don't know. So, but then, of course, that shifted, and we got into the war with Iraq, and then all of a sudden the preacher said, no, it wasn't the Soviet Union. It is, in fact, one of the countries in the Middle East. And then it became, of course, Al-Qaeda and the terrorist groups, I've heard more recently North Korea, TV evangelists speculating that's how the end of the world will become, from a battle of Armageddon. Interestingly, always the United States, in out of 2,000 years of world history, of all the countries in the world, always the United States. There is an emphasis on me about TV evangelists. Me, my country, my view. It's interesting that out of 2,000 years of history and all the countries in the world, it would come then, it would come to him, and it would come in his country. Interesting. Keep that in mind. So let's talk about the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation was written by John of Patmos, who had been put in prison by the Roman Empire for being a Christian. And Patmos was a rocky little island. It was a place where people would be sent so they couldn't be a bother to the Roman Empire. They couldn't sort of be getting people to be have insurrection, because one of the concerns in the Roman Empire was loyalty. And if you had people who were declaring their loyalty to Jesus and not to Caesar, this could become a problem. It could develop into something. So better to nip it in the bud. And so these Christians, this early church, developing out of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And John of Patmos was one of those persons. He was put on this island. And while he was there, he had visions. And these visions were very filled with imagery. And keep in mind that he couldn't be explicit in his writings for fear that the Roman Empire would read these visions and see them for what they were, which was insurrection, right? And so they had to speak about beasts and dragons and 4 horsemen, right? And all of these references are code. They're code. And so let me just take you through some of this. The first thing to say is that when the book of Revelations is referencing a beast or the devil or the dragon, it is not the Soviet Union or the Middle East or Al-Qaeda. It is the Roman Empire. This early church, which was coming into its own and attempting to spread its message of what Jesus was and would be, was coming up against a very big challenge, which was the Roman Empire. And so all of these images that are referenced in the book of Revelations are to the Roman Empire. They are to Caesar, and just keep in mind that the earliest creed of the early church was 3 words: Jesus is Lord. And in the Roman Empire, there was only one Lord, and that was Caesar. And so to say that Jesus was Lord was to also say Caesar wasn't Lord, which was a huge problem for citizenship, right? Which is why the early church at the outset was deemed to be an insurrection. A little bit more to say. There are many mentions of 7 in the book of Revelation. You will see the number 7 used quite a bit. And 7 is a number to the nation of Israel that is perfection. It is the number of days in which God made the world, the story that we are given in the book of Genesis. Not a literal story, may I say, not a literal story, but a story that helps us understand the activity of God. You see, you have to understand that the earliest people of faith, the people who understood God in their life, expressed their faith by way of story. And they believed that the number 7 meant perfection. And so they would talk about 7 always in a good way. However, the number 6, which was 1 less than 7, was imperfect. And that's why the mark of the beast is 666, to represent the imperfection of that, right? Some other things to mention. The 144,000 is not a literal number about how many people will be saved. Please don't go to bed tonight worried whether you are, of all of the numbers of people born in the human earth, one of the sacred 144,000. It's not an absolute number. It refers to the 12 tribes of Israel, and 12,000 is in a way of kind of rounding out and multiplying to get to 144,000. It's a round number to express this continuity of faithfulness for end times. That there will be a moment when the faithful will be, if you will, rescued by a God who is on the side of faith people, right? So here was John of Patmos being persecuted, watching as early Christians, and by the way, the one identified as the beast is Nero. Almost all scholars say Nero, Nero, the emperor, was identified as the beast. Why is that? Why was he given such a very critical name, the beast, and described in such visceral terms? Well, Nero used to do things like have put all the Christians, if you will, in an arena. He would dip them in certain kinds of that would make wild dogs want to bite, and then put the Christians there and watch them die this horrible death. Or he would put some sort of inflaming fluid on Christians and burn them alive on a cross. That's what Nero did. So imagine that you're John of Patmos, writing and having these visions, and as you're describing the situation, it is very much an us and them situation. The Roman Empire are taking your people of faith, and they are killing them in horrible ways. And so obviously the book of Revelation will be infused with a lot of anger, a lot of righteous anger, right? And we have to understand that. We as Christians live in a place where we do not face persecution in Canada, where we can act out our faith at will, all right? So the situation is very different. And so looking at the anger of the book of Revelation and its, the battle of Armageddon and good and evil, that comes out of a kind of persecution. If you've ever spoken to anyone who's come out of a situation where they were being persecuted for their faith or their identity or their race or their gender or their orientation, you will know that they will have some pretty righteous anger toward those who have oppressed them, and rightly so. But I don't think we in the Christian church in Canada need to take that anger into this place. It's good to know it, it's good to be aware of it, it's good to be aware of it. So in this pandemic, I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you look at Revelation 21, which is as it ends, it says, every tear will be wiped away. It says that now will come a time when God's perfect peace will come. And that is, if you will, the message of the book of Revelation to people of all time, that no matter what crisis, no matter what pain you are enduring, God is with you. There will come a time when God will be with us in a way, either in this life or in the life to come, where there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and every tear will be wiped away. And Anne is going to sing those words in our hymn number 713 from Voices United. I see a new heaven and a new earth. Yes, we do. God bless you all. Amen.